Welcome back, everyone. This is Mr. Brain, your friendly neighborhood gaming dad, here with another video. And I would just like to say thank you to Call Me Rose on Discord for suggesting this video be made. It came to our attention that there are some definitions in this game that people just may not know. And while I have touched on a few of these in other videos, I thought it might be nice to just try and make an all-encompassing video that incorporates at least most of these terms that you might run into that you may or may not know. So if you're a new player getting into the game that wants to know what these terms mean, or if you're an experienced player that may be a little bit confused on what these terms actually do and how they actually affect the game, hopefully this is a good one-stop shop video for you. And I'm going to go down the list of how they were presented to me in order. So here is 10 definitions that you should probably know regardless of your skill level in this game. And the first one that was brought up to me was counter damage. Counter damage is brought up a lot, and you see it a lot on infantry commanders, but what exactly does it mean? Counter damage is affected in combat, and it deals damage whenever you are dealt damage. I can show you where it pops up in combat, and you can see it for yourself if you would like to. If I bring down this drop down bar, I can see that I launched a basic attack on the enemy, and in return, that enemy launched a counterattack on me. This happens for every single time a basic attack is launched against you. So if you're targeted by one person, 3 people, 8 people, you will deal a counterattack damage back to each attacker that is targeting you. You'll find this primarily on garrison or infantry commanders. Raigoro, Thunder, Eddie, Jacob is also getting this as well. So if you're curious about counterattack and how much is affecting your combat, come into your combat log. Take a look at counterattacks, the counterattacks that you're doing specifically, of course. And I can see that the enemy launched a basic attack on me and I dealt a counterattack back. You can see how that damage is playing into your total damage for combat. On that note, the next term is basic damage. Basic damage is the single instance per second of you dealing damage to whoever you're targeting. Counter damage can affect multiple people, but your basic attack only affects one person. There are a couple of ways to boost basic attacks specifically. The primary ways are with your armaments. You can find basic attack damage buffs on armaments. I don't know if I have one specifically, and there are a couple of hero skills that boost it. Elena is famous for it, especially her final skill, which increases basic attack damage by up to 53%. But just be reminded, it's just the instance of you attacking your target. You don't get any additional basic attacks per second other than whatever it is that you're targeting. Now, number 3, direct damage. Direct damage is what you will see a lot of times in skill damage effects. See if I can find a good instance of it. I believe Catherine uses that term. Nope. Here we go. Deals direct damage. Direct damage, while it shows up in a weird way, it doesn't mean anything fancy. It just says I'm going to deal direct damage to my target, whoever it is I happen to have clicked on within that second, and I'm going to deal that damage factor to them. And that's it. Nothing fancy about it, no tricky wording. I do hate the fact that direct needs to be there, because deals damage would just say the same thing. So if you see that, cross out direct. It gets the point across. Definition number 4 is bonus damage. Bonus damage usually refers to anything that isn't included in the very first damage factor. That being said, There's not a lot of, I don't think there's anything in the game that boosts bonus damage. Not in this game, anyway. If you've played Rise of Kingdoms, you know there was a particular talent that boosted bonus damage specifically. That doesn't exist here. If you're boosting damage, bonus damage is also going to be affected. I do want to see about one instance and see if it's written that way as well. Robert, for example, has the dealing damage. This doesn't count as bonus damage. However, it does mean the same thing. Bonus damage is just damage factor outside of your active skill damage. It's still counted as skill damage. It's still affected by any damage buffs. Everything else applies to it. So again, you could just remove bonus and it would mean the same thing. Definition number 5 is AoE. Now, a lot of you who have been gaming for a while already know that AoE stands for Area of Effect. In Doomsday, it just means any heroes that deal damage in an area or target multiple enemies. And the area of effect in this case is whatever shape they say it's supposed to be. For example, Lewis, his fan-shaped area, I believe, is a 90-degree arc in front of him, so 45 degrees on either side. That does upgrade to a circular area affecting all around him. That is his AoE. Other heroes have this effect as well, such as Freya, dealing 3 damage to 3 targets in a small fan in front of her. Lee, 5 targets in a fan-shaped area in front, 90-degree angle in front. So AoE is just area of effect. Any hero that deals damage to multiple targets has what's known as AoE. Definition number 4 is a debuff. Now, if you haven't been gaming before, debuff may be a confusing term. It's just the exact opposite of a buff. And I can actually talk about both here. A buff is any augment to your stats. Alex is a great buffer. He increases squad defense, infantry squad defense, range squad attack, and rider squad HP. Those are buffs to your stats to make you stronger in one area or another. A lot of heroes do this, whether it be Alex with all of the stat buffs, or having skill damage increases alongside of it, range squad HP, increasing skill damage on yourself. Those are buffs. They buff your stats, whether permanently or temporarily. Usually when people are talking about buffs, they're talking about the temporary ones that are affected by active skills, and those make them buffing units. But just keep in mind, anything that increases your stats is a buff to your stats. On the opposite end of that, anything that is a decrease to your stats is called a debuff. Lee is the premier debuffing unit. He reduces the target's attack, defense, and HP by 30%, or up to 35% if you awaken him. Lucky people. There are other people that inflict debuffs as well. Bella is actually a debuff unit in that she increases the damage taken by the enemy by a large amount. That is a debuff because she's causing you to take more damage. Things like that. Definition number 7, reduce damage. And honestly, that is pretty straightforward. It's a flat reduction in damage, usually accompanied by a percentage of damage that is reduced. That is off the back end. There's no other calculations that happen after this point. So if you were going to take 100 damage and you reduce that damage by 5%, you will take 95 damage. Does that make sense? I hope that isn't too confusing there. It's just reduced damage just is a flat reduction by a percentage that is usually accompanied with it. Definition number 8, rage recovery. If you've watched my video on rage before, you already know that rage is the requirement for your active skills. 99.99% of heroes require 1,000 rage. I hope you all know which one is different. That being said, anything that increases your rage, whether it be for a single turn or in a burst, is considered rage recovery. There are many different ways to recover rage, whether it be from active skills, whether it be from talents, such as Wild Rage, the Hang Tough, Raging Heart. A lot of different ways to increase rage there. The skill and support talent trees come with Surging Rage, which is a nice buff to rage generation just for using a skill. And if I remember correctly, I don't personally have it. There is an armament that gives you a small amount of rage per turn. So there's many different ways to get your rage, and the goal is to get to that 1,000 as quickly as possible. The sooner you get there, the sooner your skill goes off, and the sooner you can start the cycle all over again. Trigger rate is a question that I was asked personally in Discord. And definition number 9, trigger rate is how often a skill is allowed to trigger. For example, there are skills in the game that have a trigger rate. For example, this effect can only be triggered once in 10 seconds. That is what's known as a trigger rate, how often this can go off without issue. If I'm attacked and I reduce that attacker's travel speed by 30% for 5 seconds, I can expect a timer in the background that doesn't show up in a combat log anywhere, sadly, to count down from 10 seconds. Once that happens, and that whole 10 seconds is up, then this can activate again. Now, there are some other ones. I believe Robert is a good one for this one, who has a 20% chance to activate a skill, and then this effect can only be triggered once in 6 seconds per target. So even once the 6 seconds is up, then I'll have the 20% chance to activate it again. So just keep that in mind when you're reading some of these skills. All this means is that if I've triggered it, it has to count down from 6 seconds, in this case, before it'll trigger again. Number 10 is I'm actually going to combine three different terms here, and that is damage factor, heal factor, and the shield factor. While it does say damage factor in this case as well, with Eddie, we actually get a shield factor in this case. But in essence, all of these are essentially the same. Now, certain different things affect them, but all of the numbers mean the same thing. Once you have done all the calculations to determine how much damage you would normally do in a turn, that damage factor is applied to it. To give you an idea of where it stands, a standard round of combat will deal about 2,000 damage factor. So, a damage factor of 1,100, or almost 1,200, is going to deal 6 times the normal amount of damage in a round of combat in a single turn, and that's on top of the basic attack you're already going to do. The shield factor is going to mitigate about 1 round's worth of damage right off the bat. Now, of course, that doesn't absorb skill damage well. 2,500 doesn't absorb skill damage well. But Rygoro's at 9,600 can absorb a pretty solid skill damage hit. Heal factor works the same way. Thunder heals 2,800 heal factor, which is almost a round and a half's worth of HP per turn for 5 seconds. And if you haven't done the math in your head already, you're basically healing 7.5 rounds of combat every 10 seconds. Reasons why Thunder is busted. But that's 10 definitions that you should know going into this game if you don't already know them. If you're just now watching this on my YouTube page, just know you could have gotten this video 24 hours sooner over on my Patreon page. I drop everything over there about a day early, so if you would like to support me and see all of this content just a little bit sooner, head on over to my Patreon, give me a follow, help me out. I love making these videos for you. And in case anyone is still sticking around for this portion of the video, Island Raid is going on. I will not be streaming it this week. And it's for a couple of reasons. One, Baldur's Gate 3 still exists, and I'm going to be playing it. And two, HNB doesn't belong in G2. Yes, I know quite a few of their members went on to ANCS, and they're probably hammering the crap out of everyone there right now, but HNB is still a 9 billion alliance. There are alliances here that are not 9 billion. Let's see, where'd they go? That is not 9 billion. Are they a great alliance? Sure. We're not G1, let's be honest. TBZ, great alliance. Love facing them. Not 9 billion. So we kind of got screwed a little bit in matchmaking. I won't be streaming this. So with that, this is Mr. Brain, your friendly neighborhood gaming dad, signing off.